God's still in control. I'm glad tonight that my God has not lost His power. I'm glad that whenever, Stephen, we were looking in our own congregation on Sunday night, and we were looking at the stoning of Stephen, and my friend, although it seemed to be a tragic situation, Stephen was coming to the end. They were all arrayed against him. It seemed the powers of hell were so great, and Stephen looked beyond the counsels of men. And he lifted up his eyes, friend. He took his eyes of man. He took his eyes of his circumstances. He took his eyes of his surroundings. And my friend Stephen stood to the very end for God. You know why? Because he looked up and he saw the Lord upon the throne. And thank God, my friend, although the hour was dark, Stephen realized that God was still upon his throne. He realized that seated at his right hand was his Son, Jesus Christ. But Stephen saw the standing Christ. He saw the standing Christ, standing to rise in defense of his child, standing to strengthen, standing, my friend, to help in death's hour for the man of God. Thank God, Jesus never failed his child, even in the darkest hour that he ever faced. And I tell you, my friend, tonight, Jesus never fails. He never fails. Thank God there are many in this meeting can say they have had friends in this world who have disappeared in the hour they needed the most. But thank God there are men and women can say, I've had Jesus in the sunshine, but I've had him in the shadows, and I found him still to be the same. I found him to be true. I found him never to fail. I found him to be there when I needed him. I found him never to leave me and never to forsake me. When all my friends had gone, Jesus still stood by. And oh, my friend, the hymn writer penned it right when he said, what a friend we have in Jesus. I wonder tonight, my friend, do you fear God? Do you fear God? You know what the Bible tells me in Romans chapter 3, verse 18? Whenever God is climaxing his 14-fold indictment against sinful man, this is what God says: there is no fear of God before their eyes. There's no fear of God. And oh, I look at our young people today, and the tragedy is this: there's no fear of God. I see them as they go through our streets and our cities, and I see them in their defiance and rebellion. And oh, my friend, there is no fear of God before their eyes. On Sunday night last, at the end of our gospel meeting, I had the joy of pointing a dear Roman Catholic woman to Jesus Christ. And you know, my friend, as I spoke to that woman in my little room at the back, the minister's room, and there was another young girl being pointed to Christ, a policeman's daughter. Pray for her dad. Her dad's under deep conviction of sin. Big policeman in McCrea, and God's dealing with him. Pray that God will save him. His daughter was saved. But I was down in my room pointing this Roman Catholic woman to Jesus Christ. And you know, she looked at me when I went in. Another sister was dealing with her. And my little go was hard. And she says, you know, but Mr. McCrea, just hold it 1 second. She says, you know, how would I face my mother? You know, I've been brought up in the Roman Catholic Church, and my mother's a devout Roman Catholic. How could I face her and tell her that I'm saved? How would I face my stepfather and tell him he wouldn't understand? How would I face my workmates, my fellow Roman Catholics tomorrow, and tell them that I'm no longer in the bondage of it? How could I face them? And then she said, Mr. McCrea, worst of all, how could I face the priest? She says, you know, no matter how long I keep from him, I'll still have to meet him someday around the corner. He's sure to come, and when he hears about it, he'll land in my home and face me, face to face. She says, tell me, how will I face him? I'm afraid to face him. And I looked at that young woman, a young woman near, perhaps near 30 years of age, with tear-lit eyes, and I said, listen, young woman, you've told me about the fear of meeting your mum and telling you you're saved, and meeting your stepfather and telling him you're saved. You've told me about the fear of meeting your companions at work and telling them that you're saved. You've told me about the fear of meeting the priest I says, young woman, but tell me something else. What about the fear of God, of meeting him unsaved? And my friend, the tragedy is this today, man hasn't that fear. We have lost the awesome wonder of the great Creator God before whom we'll stand. One day the books of God will be opened. And we'll stand before the books of God on that great day, and the Bible says, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. Oh, the fear of standing before God. An unregenerate, unsaved, lost soul, to hear from the lips of a loving Christ, depart from me, I never knew you. On your way to hell, man. I've weighed you in the judgment, and you're found wanting. I've weighed you in the balance, and you're found wanting. Oh, but God, my friends, thought I wasn't a bad person. Oh, but Lord, I went to church. I said my prayers. I read my Bible. I was a Sunday school teacher. I was an elder. I was a committee man. And God says, but I've done the weighing. It's not your friends, your church that's weighing you now. God says, I've weighed you in the balance, and you're found wanting. And my friend, the judge of all the world dons the black cap of his judgment, and you hear the pronouncing of your doom. Depart from me, I never knew you. I talked to a young man the other night, taking a stand for the Lord. You know what he said to me? He says, Mr. McCrea, I know what is right, but I stand to lose with my dad £100,000 if I take my stand for Jesus. He says, I'm not willing to pay it. 100,000 quid. And I looked at the young man between the eyes and I says, young man, I want to tell you this, you're not only losing 100,000 or think you're gaining 100,000, but you're losing far more. That young man, let me tell you, friend, he's not only losing himself, but he has 2 little children. And those 2 little children have precious souls. And that young man, because of that £100,000 worth of property that his dad is willing to give him, he's going to take that little child from a Sunday school where she hears the gospel, and he's going to send her to a Sunday school which is cursed of hell. And Dad will not only lose himself, but he'll take his family to hell with him. 100,000 quid. There'll be someone here in this meeting tonight, and it's not even 100,000, but my friend, let me tell you this. Up until the night, there's been no fear of God upon your soul. No fear! And Joshua says, fear God! Fear the Lord! Ah, but he doesn't stop there. Look at the next thing. He says, serve him. Serve him. Let me tell you, my friend, that's not just signing a little decision card. That's not making little professions. We're talking about God's salvation now. Serve him. And my dear friend, the tragedy is this today, that men and women are getting carried away. They think they can sign a little decision card and make a profession of faith, and they can go back into the world and they can live like a devil and still go to heaven. Not so, friend. The very devil in hell would dupe you into thinking that. God says, serve him. Serve him. Loyalty to Christ. Joel 2:13 says, rend your hearts and not your garments. You see, my friend, God doesn't look on the outward appearance. Man does that, but God looks on the heart. I wonder as God looks on the heart tonight, and he pulls aside all those garments and all the rubbish that's in the way. And God pulls them back, friend, all the garments of self-righteousness, and God pulls them back tonight. I wonder what God sees. It's not decisionism you need in this campaign. It's not professions. I tell you what you need for God to save you. It's possession. And what an awful thing, my friend, of the very devil of hell would jerk men and women into feeling that all they've got to do is make a little profession. Well, all right. God says, fear him. God says, serve him. And oh, young man, I say to you tonight, listen. One day when you stand before God, God's going to look and God's going to weigh your life in the light of his word. I wonder tonight, do you really see it?